All right, great. Thanks, Kath. And I hope everybody can hear me okay. Um, so as Kath has just said, I'm a principal at Kensington Community School. It's a school in downtown Toronto, and it's a fairly needy community. So definitely very urban. And we're in our fifth year now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the perceived obstacles to implementing OPAL and how we overcame them. When I got to Kensington 5 years ago, I was actually taking over as a brand new principal, taking over for a principal who had passed away over the summer, which made for a very unusual entry, as you can imagine. I didn't have anyone really to show me around, and I was dealing with memorials and upset staff and all the rest of it. So very weird kind of first few days. We'll just go to the next slide if you don't mind. Yeah, and so this is sort of what I encountered. You can see the slide on the left is what our playground looked like at the time. The slide on the right is from a very nice prison in Southern California. Um, and and it struck me right away that our kids really had some needs that were not being met by the facilities. Next slide, please. So you can see we had we had all the problems that you have in an urban setting. We had drugs and needles on the playground, lots of graffiti, broken glass, lots of garbage, and then sometimes they would actually set fire to our garbage cans. So lots to keep track of out there that really wasn't child friendly or appropriate for our purposes. Next slide, please. The weirdest thing about Kensington when I got there was our climber, and our climber had a whole series of rules associated with it. You could only traverse it in one direction. It was only available to certain kids on certain days of the week. If it had been raining, you weren't allowed to use it because it was wet. So it really did seem to me that I had inherited a prison yard more than a playground. This is actually a photograph of the climber outside Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Ours was not quite as nice as this one, but I think you get the idea. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I started right away when I got to Kensington was working on getting the yard renovated, and that's a topic for another talk, frankly. But we did eventually get the yard renovated. But the immediate fallout of having the yard renovated was we went from having a terrible yard to having half of a terrible yard because the construction fencing went up, the bulldozers moved in, and now we were squeezed into a little corner of the yard. And so it seemed initially that we'd sort of made things worse. But what we decided to do right out the gate was just start where the kids were. So we did what they were already doing, which was we are digging, which they like to do. We gave them some cardboard boxes. These are free items. These are easy items. You can leave them out, and to a certain extent, they're not going to go missing or be broken. And from there, next slide, please. We added tires, we added tubes, all the usual OPAL fare. And what we found is by introducing things sort of in stages, every few weeks, kind of seeing what the kids would do with it, we could build our parameters, build our expectations around each new item. And slowly the kids got better and better at using these things. We'll go to the next slide, please. Tubes and flags, so all sorts of things. This tube on the left here, I came out the day we put this out, the entire school was having a tug of war. The grade sixes versus the entire rest of the school. Just spontaneous play. It doesn't need to be directed or instructed in any way. Next slide, please. What you'll start to see happening at your schools, of course, is the more parts you put out, the greater variety, the more creative the kids are. You can see the construction fencing in the bottom corner. We turned the fencing into a drum kit. We gave them a construction site radio, and we had dance parties. Next slide, please. And what the kids will do if you take this leap is they will start to use things as loose parts that you never thought of. This is a vent. There's warm air coming out of this vent on my playground. I had never given it any thought at all. The kids built a seat so that they could warm themselves up while having their snack on the yard. You see this kind of thing on yards all the time when you provide kids with OPAL opportunities. Next slide, please. Okay, so I won't go on at length about this. I know there's lots of people to talk to you today about this, but these were the initial, positive signs. And 5 years later, this is what we see on our yard. Really, only positives, I would say. Next slide, please. So I guess the message that I just want to leave you with today is that we did this at Kensington in spite of what seemed like really less than ideal conditions. Threats from the community, the passing of the principal, the construction. We tried it, and it took, because it's what's best for kids. So I recognize that we're all working our way through COVID-19 right now and all the associated challenges. I guess I just want to remind you that some of the challenges that you perceive right now are probably just in your imagination. And if you work on this and work with your kids and your staff, you can certainly get something done for them. Next slide, please. That's it. That's me. So if you're curious about the presentation, or you're working in North America, especially if you're from Toronto, you can, or anywhere else, reach out and find me. Thank you so much.